While I was doing one of my challenge runs, I noticed something that was very small and minute, which I never actually knew was a thing before. I then got thinking, oh my gosh, small details about Miitopia, my favorite niche game. Surely no one has ever done a video on. There are several videos already made about this. But hey, I looked at them and still decided to go through with this by simply finding other facts. Some of them being from the wiki. That also means that you should definitely go check out the other videos like this, but only after you watch this one, and maybe like it. Perhaps even subscribe. So let's start out simple, with one that I've actually quizzed you all on before. When a Mii is wearing male popstar clothes, there can actually be a gender difference, despite the fact that popstar is already split up by gender. The difference is that male Miis won't have an undershirt, but if the chest is exposed at all on a female Mii, they have to have one. I mean, I get it, but nothing is showing either way. To follow up on that, number 2, the same applies for all of the macho outfits. Yeah, refer to my last statement, it's kinda weird, but understandable. Next up, number 3. Something neat is how Miis will actually sit differently during camping events, depending on their personality. Yep, they all assume poses that you might expect. Cautious Miis keep their hands close together, stubborn Miis cross their arms, and laid back just, well, lays back. The camping outing is not abundant in the game, so if you want to see footage, here is an iCard to a video. Not all of the poses are so distinct though, like the kind Mii putting their hands a bit lower down than the cautious Mii. The fourth thing is a bit more meta, but also not entirely. The name for the default Dark Lord is Stan, but furthermore, the game files refer to the Dark Lord as Satan. Yep, Satan. Which brings me to the fifth one actually, being that both the game files and the official European version call the guardian spirit God. I think that I mentioned this in my Miitopia iceberg years ago, but Miitopia is like a religious story, funny enough. Hey though, we have another thing that relates to the game files, and ties into dialogue within the game. Number 6. You probably already know about the line of dialogue in Greenhorn where a party member asks if there will be a princess in the castle, and somebody else says that they are always in another castle. You probably already know that's a Mario reference, yeah? Well, I bet you didn't know that the files for the castle almost all call it Other Castle. This is one of 2 castles in the game, and it is the first one that you encounter. They definitely did this on purpose, and I mean, I guess the princess was in a other castle. Anyways, moving on. 7 is a fun one that you will definitely never encounter, but this first fight against the slime actually has a safety mechanic. Yeah, apparently if you lose the first fight, the game will give you the option to just choose a different job. I found this out in one of my challenges, and it's pretty neat. Was this intended when designing it? Maybe not, because the only job that would be weak enough to lose is Popstar, which actually has 5 more health than all the other jobs at level 1, so it can't lose. Still though, this is something that the game does in fact do. Okay, 8. Unlike the last thing, this might actually be possible to do in vanilla Miitopia, in where if you lose the fight where you're supposed to get your first teammate, the game lets you progress as normal anyways. Yeah, it's pretty cool, and something else that I found out during a challenge. What's more, I also found out while modding stuff that if there is a fight after this event, before you get to the inn, you will just instantly lose. The reason for this is because you both have 0 health when it starts, but if there isn't a fight, then the game just doesn't care. For number 9, this might be a bit more of a normal thing that you've encountered in gameplay, but just hear me out. You have no idea how many people do not know this. When you're in the inn and you buy a banana, yes, buying an HP banana, it's quite unheard of. Your me has a chance to get 3 for the price of 1, like how they can buy a banana instead of gear. The same applies to MP candies too, of course. That fact was a bit weak though, so when your armor is the best that everyone can get for their level, there's a chance that the prize for the gold roulette will instead be 10 HP bananas. Speaking of 10, number 10 is that you can actually eat a disliked food twice in one sitting. Normally, a me will say that they are not eating that again, but if you feed them anything else in between, then they'll actually try to stomach the food instead. This of course would require at least one small food in order to do it, and also is not very practical, unless you're doing a solo run. Number 11. There are practically identical versions of some enemies. Yeah, it's weird, and it's common in the game too, where they'll have a boss version of an enemy and then a normal version with the same name and model. More than that, there's 3 versions of Rockmoth in the game files. Of course, I'm pretty sure that 2 of them are unused and just have different skills. There's also a version of Goblin called Goblin0_dish in the game files, which just has a 100% chance to drop food, so the game can give you the food tutorial. You know what's way more interesting than all these game file based facts though? Something that you experience that you almost would never notice, but has been right under your nose this whole time. For number 12, there is a gender difference when a me uses snap out of it. Yeah, this is definitely the stupidest thing that I know about Miitopia, but when a male me uses it, they say, well, snap out of it. However, if a female me uses the skill instead, it will say, keep it together. There is no reason for this to be a thing. Next, 13. The cat ears during the Fab Fairy dance are animated. They move up and down all silly-like, and I don't think this is something that they just innately do. It could have to do with the fact that the Fab Fairy ears are animated, and maybe they're part of the same rig as the cat ears, so that the animation effects would play on them too. I'm not recording gameplay all the way up till Fab Fairies with a cat just to show you this, but I will put an iCard to a video. 14. Chests have maximum payouts. I know for a fact that people do not know this because of some of the comments that I get on some of my challenge videos. Chests have this sort of gold or tier-based limit to them, where when they give clothes or a weapon, it has to be within that limit. If you say, for instance, have a me that is holding a late game weapon and the chest is very early game, then it will instead give you the maximum amount of gold that the weapon could have been. And that is going to be something to keep in mind for a future challenge. Okay, so we are almost halfway through, so for 15, let's mention how the broom is one of the only weapons with a color-changing property. Yeah, the broom, this random weapon for the mage. You might not see it, but like the cat claws, heck, not even all of the cat claws change color, but the broom can do that. It is the little band on the broom, and it matches the color of your clothes, which is so silly. So anyways, back to snap out of it, there is actually a unique animation for that as well. For number 16, when Miis are quarreling with each other, there will be a unique animation for getting slapped, which is pretty funny. It only makes sense. They are upset at each other, and have an excuse to slap them. Here's something that's actually useful that some people apparently haven't realized, but number 17, attacking something will make the AI prioritize it. I mean, it only makes sense to me, but I don't think a lot of people notice it, at least from the videos that I've watched, and I watch a lot of Miitopia videos. It's one of the few ways to actually strategize in the game, and you of course have to do it manually, auto battle does not necessarily make Mii's target stuff. Although, if there is not a designated target, then I believe that the AI will just target whatever has the lowest health. Okay. Here is something that's funny, and I mean like, funny. Number 18. The US English version of Miitopia inconsistently uses the names MP Candies and MP Sweets. Yeah, that's pretty funny, and there's actually kind of a good reason for it. There is an EU and US version of Miitopia, I think that we all know this, and despite being a remake of the original, the text is probably just ported over. However, there is new text within the game, a brand new chunk of the game actually, being outings. These were just copied over from the EU version, I guess, where they say MP Sweets instead of candy, and the game is still just like that. Alright, number 19. Laid-back Miis have unique animations for magic, and specifically magic. This would not be a very good fact if it wasn't as specific as it is, but yeah. When a mage or cleric is getting serious as a laid-back Mii, they have a unique animation where they gather a lot of magic around them. For every other job, and normal attacks from the mage and cleric too, it is the same animation. So, this little touch just adds a lot. Number 20. There are non-contact moves from monsters in Miitopia. Yep, just like how you have attacks that work from range, so do some of the enemies, and I'm not talking about special skills. Mainly, this is something that the moles do. If you set up something like a booby trap and you get hit by a mole's basic attack, it'll just go straight through. It is an interesting bit of knowledge, I'd say, but yeah, pretty small detail. For number 21, I found this out just recently, and I mean very recently. A Mii cannot always activate the warm-up skill, no matter what, if the enemy will just die anyways. I tried while using a mod to make it have a 100% chance, and it just would not activate. Crazy stuff. Of course, the cautious Mii also has Finisher, but even in instances where I set Finisher to have a 0% chance of activating, the cautious warm-up skill would just not work. This was probably so that the player wouldn't die to an attack last second because their Mii decided to let the enemy go first. For 22, let's go back to some less nitty-gritty sort of details, being the name of the fiend. In Japanese, the fiend's name is just Shinigami, which, if you know Japanese or have just watched Death Note, means God of Death. Yeah, that explains a thing or two. Certainly scarier than in English. Here's a real fun fact. Number 23 is that the Dark Lord, Darkest Lord, and the Dark Sun do not count as faces saved. The first two make sense in terms of the lore, because the Dark Curse just took over people's bodies, it didn't take their face, and also has no face of its own. The Dark Sun, on the other hand, is probably just because they used the Darkest Lord as the base for the enemy. Number 24 now. Here is one that I didn't even know, but for good reason. In the journal, you can eat food. Yeah, that's it. I have never used a journal, and I suspect that a lot of people watching haven't either, and of course I've never tried to eat the food that is in the journal. Like, what? It doesn't do anything though, so it's not really important. Maybe it's just a me thing, so that's probably a weak fact, but I have more. Such as 25, 100% game completion can be locked if you spare the spirit shield. There is a fight in the Dark Lord's castle where this enemy shows up as a part of a boss fight, and I don't remember if the sword could do the same thing, but yeah. I only even know this because someone came into the Miitopia Discord asking for a way to fix it with a mod. I looked, and it said that it just doesn't show up anywhere else. It is crazy. So that means that if you spared it, you would never beat the enemy, meaning that you can't beat all of the enemies, which I'm pretty sure is part of a medal to complete the game. Moving on, 26, there is a skill that can become entirely and completely useless. The Chef's Banana Fritter skill just will not activate after you max out your HP bananas because they're maxed out. This is really funny because it's just a skill that stops working. Alrighty, we're getting up there now. Next we have number 27. The tank has skills that it just kinda can't use, but not really. There are skills that the tank gets which it just doesn't have enough MP to use at those levels, and this is surely an oversight, right? I mean, you can increase your MP level with food, and of course leveling up will get you more MP, but this is just kinda crazy, because that means you might as well have not gotten the skill until you were a high enough level to have that much MP. And you wouldn't even notice this in the game because the tank comes late into the game, and you don't usually see the MP requirements for a party member's skill, and the main character would have some MP buffs from food by that point. Anyways, number 28. The horse has unique animations for different levels of Snort. Now, I don't think this applied to the base form of Snort, but unlike things such as Lend a Hand and I think the horse's mounted attack, the different levels of Snort have new animations, whereas those other things do not. They are very subtle differences, really, but there are a few things that you can notice about them. I'm getting the footage together after writing and recording this script, so do not judge me, but just speaking from memory, the flaming snorts will leave burn marks on the ground at higher levels of the skill, and form fire tornadoes, which is cool. Number 29 already. Wow. Sprinkles. They get faster the more of them you have. You might know that, but yeah, your sprinkle speed is actually capped depending on the number of maximum sprinkles you have. But more than that, on the 3DS version of Miitopia, it actually works a bit differently. It still works that way for the most part, but the game included touchscreen support, and you could actually sprinkle even faster if you just shook it really hard while using the touchscreen. And finally, here we are, number 30, the Big 3-0. This is probably my favorite little fact about Miitopia out of all of them, which is why I left it for last. I compare Miitopia stats and damage calculation to Pokemon a lot, but there is something else that kind of works like it does in Pokemon, specifically like the move Psyshock. That is a move that uses special attack and deals physical damage. A move like that exists in Miitopia, calculating damage with magic and defense. This is the vampire's Bat Tornado. This means that despite it being a magical attack, it can deal big damage to monsters that are magic resistant, which is super cool. I love to see a small thing like that exist in Miitopia, but it isn't really written in the move description, probably for the sake of simplicity, I guess. And yeah, that's all the facts that I have for you. I tried real hard, but getting 30 facts that weren't in the other videos that I mentioned was pretty hard, especially when those videos already had really good facts in them. I hope that you at least learned something from this though, and that you liked listening to these very silly little facts. With that all said and done though, thank you to everybody for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye!